You ready? Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a special meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is Friday, June 14th, 2024, Flag Day. We will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. We will now move into public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record. Are there any members of the public who would wish to make a comment? Is there anybody online?
Nobody online.
Nobody online. Thank you. I will open the hearing, the public hearing on item 3C.
County Administration Department Administrative Officers Overview and Presentation of the 2024-2025 Proposed County Budget and Special Revenue Budgets with the direction as needed.
Thank you. And now we'll move to item 3A.
Chair, might I suggest before you move to 3A to allow the public hearing overview by staff? And
Sure.
then,
I didn't know there was one, but that'd be great.
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. Included in your board's agenda today is a proposed continuation budget. I know we're not on that item, but that is what staff had prepared. It reflects the 23-24 adopted appropriations with one exception. There are 2 grants that DSS did as an adjustment in the middle of the year, and that if we don't include it in the continuation, would have to stop operations for 3 months. So we did make, and we noted that you'll see it on the continuation budget, that there are 2 grant-funded orgs that we added to the continuation budget. Otherwise, it reflects dollar for dollar what was adopted for the 23-24 fiscal year budget.
Okay, so that sounds like it was 3A.
Chair, I'm sorry for the confusion, but 3C is a presentation of the proposed budget. From Monday's hearing, there was a request to administration to, or it sounded like for the board to not adopt what was presented. And so I envision 3C is still what the suggestion is to adopt, which is in 3B. Just on like Monday's
Okay.
Hearing or agenda, there was a presentation, a hearing on what was being proposed, and then a separate item was the actual action items once the hearings were closed. So this would be the opportunity to present what is being suggested to the board to adopt, since nothing was adopted on Monday. Is that
Okay.
clear as mud?
Well, I see in 3B, it talks about discussions, so it looks like there's opportunities in both places to discuss.
That
Is that
that's
correct?
fair, yes.
Okay, very good.
But the hearing is a place to where all the documents that are being proposed and any changes to the budget documents, this is the time to have a discussion and propose those for.
And thank you, council. I think maybe what we can clarify as staff is that there are no additional documents other than appropriations and revenue summaries, which, as was mentioned, reflects the 23-24 levels. That's what staff prepared and is prepared to present once we get into item 3B.
All right, very good. Well, let's go ahead. We've discussed that enough. Let's go ahead and move on then, if it's okay, to item 3A.
County Administration Department, resolutions establishing appropriations limits. Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution establishing an appropriations limit for 2024-2025 fiscal year for the County of Madera. Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution establishing appropriations limits for 2024-2025 fiscal year of each and all of the County of Madera special districts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. These two resolutions adopts our statutory requirement to adopt the what we refer to as the GAN limit. It's a predetermined calculation based on taxes collected by the government and basically stipulates that any appropriated local taxes shall not exceed these GAN limits for the fiscal year. These resolutions are required to meet that law. The proposed continuation budget and the proposed 24-25 special districts budgets both comply with the GAN limit established in these resolutions.
Very good. Are there any questions regarding the GAN limit as discussed and adopting these resolutions? Are there any members of the public that have any questions? Seeing none, I will bring the item back for action.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 3A. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor McCauley,
Yes.
Supervisor Wamhaugh,
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez,
Yes.
Chairman Poitras,
Yes,
Supervisor Rogers is absent. Vote passes 4-0.
thank you. And we'll move to item 3B.
County Administration Department fiscal year 2024-2025 county budget. Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution approving the county special districts budgets for fiscal year 2024-2025. Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution approving a continuation budget, county budget, including special revenues budgets for fiscal year 2024-2025 in order to facilitate authority to spend until the county final budget is adopted. Discussion and consideration to delegate authority to the county administrative officer or designee to unfund vacant positions that do not meet any of the selective hiring freeze exemptions during the fiscal year 2024-2025.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I lost my train of thought. For the first recommended action, your board did conduct and close the hearing for the special districts budget. This is an action to adopt the 24-25, the actual recommended budget for the special districts. As we mentioned earlier, the second action is to adopt a continuation budget for fiscal year 24-25. It reflects the current 23-24 adopted limits for revenues and expenditures, with the exception of the two budget orgs noted for DSS, because those orgs were added mid-year and pertain to 100% state and federal grants that if we do not include, they would have to stop operating from July to when the final budget is adopted. And finally, the third recommended action is a request or recommendation to delegate your board's authority to unfund vacant positions from the schedule of positions. For those positions that do not meet the 5 exemptions the board granted for the selective hiring freeze. And the operational reason for requesting this authority is to, if it's going to be frozen under the law, we have to keep the appropriations for those positions unless it's moved into the unfunded column. It allows our office the ability to, on a regular basis, take budget amendments to the board to actually reduce appropriations and reflect the savings in our operating budget.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any questions?
And I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I want to clarify, moving them to the unfunded column doesn't eliminate the position, it just recognizes that it's been unfunded.
Okay. Very good. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
please. I do appreciate you providing us with the list of currently unfunded positions. But do we have an idea of how many, or excuse me, unfilled positions, vacant positions? But do we have an idea how many of these we would unfund? Do we know what that looks like?
No, Supervisor, and I also wanted to note that the list we provided is labeled draft because these are currently what is extracted from NeoGov. And as we understand, there's inconsistencies between department records of true vacancies. And some of those would relate to either positions that are already on offer, positions that are held vacant because of one kind of leave of absence, which is not necessarily tracked in the NEOGov report. So this wouldn't be a good representation of what would be recommended. And even without those inconsistencies, we would review with each department whether or not it meets the 5 exemptions, and consistent with your board's direction, if there's a disagreement, we expect those would be resolved first, whether or not it meets the exemptions. And if we can't resolve with the departments, that may be something we recommend to the board at a because if it impacts services, that will be something that we contemplate we would bring to the board to recommend to either unfund and not just unfunded based on the delegated authority.
Is it necessary to unfund these positions today, or would it be possible? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot more, I guess, investigation to do to decide which fund or which positions would be unfunded. Would it be possible for staff to come back to us at a later date with a list of positions to be unfunded, and then we can act with a little bit more information?
Yes, Supervisor, that's a good point. I mean, the alternative, this was recommended to make the unfunding more efficient, meaning not doing it in batches. So as there's agreement with the CEO's office and with the department, yes, this is not exempted, and we agree that this should be unfunded, that we can unfund it. But the alternative would be to bring it at least quarterly to the board with a list of positions that both the CEO's office and the department agree does not meet any of the exemptions, and we would unfund it in batches via board item. That is possible. That is without the delegation, that would be the process we follow.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Any other questions or need for clarification? Yes, I see somebody in back of Joel.
Can I ask a question?
You know what? Ellie, you can just ask away.
It's my
This is
my superpower is asking questions. I'm just curious with regard to positions that come open or exist that don't have any impact on the general fund. So grant positions or positions that are totally subvented. Are we still able to hire those, or do they also need to meet an exemption?
Those meet an exemption by definition. They're not paid for by the general fund. So you'd have to submit those through NeoGov as agreed with the board on the freeze. So if you have a 100% grant filled position, just submit it.
Okay, or otherwise subvented with no impact. I'm like cobbling things together.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You would still have to show in your submission that it's
That it's no
paid
impact
for
on
by
them.
subvention from behavioral health or public health or whoever you're partnering with, so that it could be considered and approved.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
To add to what DA Moreno had said, we have approved those through the process that we have already, 100% grant funded positions. So
Joel, can you repeat the 5 exemptions that, just for the record, please?
yes, so the first exemption is that if the position is 100% state and federal or other third-party grant funded. Second exemption is that if the position is not filled, it will cause more cost to the general fund. Third exemption is that if position is a department head. Fourth exemption, I'm drawing a blank, but the fifth exemption is that it has a direct impact to public safety. I will ask Jessica to pull the fourth exemption.
Oh.
If it's state mandated.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Mhm.
Do we have any positions that are partially grant funded or partially subvented to a higher degree that maybe wouldn't make sense to freeze those positions, like 80% grant funded or 80% subvention?
Those do exist, Supervisor. They're on the rarer side. Most of the times, if it's grant funded, it's fully funded. But yes, those do exist. And in instances when those exist, they really would, they usually would fit under the public safety exemption anyway, like COPS grants, if we had a COPS grants. But normally with like DSS grants and public health grants, when the grants do fund it, it's usually 100%.
Okay,
Um,
I would like to make sure that there aren't certain positions that fall through the cracks necessarily that would be detrimental to us to, you know, to freeze, even though it doesn't necessarily meet the exemption, but if they're paid for to a high degree or high percentage, you know, those are some things that I would, you know, want to make sure don't fall through the cracks and get frozen.
Right. And I think our plan was if we do encounter those during the year is that um, we take to the board and say, hey, we're going to exempt these positions. Um, it's very hard to capture everything in 5 exemptions, but we fully contemplated that if it makes sense to fill it, it's 90% funded. If it doesn't necessarily fit, so we don't have the authority, we fully intend to inform the board and saying, hey, board, this is 90%. So he says, we'll spend 10%, but we figured it out how to do it. Rather than create some blanket exemption to carry everything. It does take that, but the freeze has been in place for just over a month now. 100% grant funded positions, we approve them as we get them, once we've certified them. And then some of those recruitments where there's a mandate associated with it, or it's going to cost overtime, we've processed those and we haven't heard any pushback so far. And we're not intending to do things that would get a lot of pushback from departments. So far, it's been a smooth process.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Any members of the public have any questions regarding our action, proposed action? Seeing and hearing none. Anybody online? Nope.
No comments online.
Okay. So we have 3 items under 3B. I'll accept a motion for action.
Chair, if I might, prior, I would just want to make a couple of comments. First, I want to just make sure that all documents that have been proposed for the budget have been submitted and are with the clerk and available. I think the answer is yes to that. And then I
Yes.
would, thank you. And then I would also suggest closing the hearing at 3C before taking action on 3B.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Before we take action, we will close the public hearing on 3C and then go to 3B. I'll accept the motion for action.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve 1, 2, and 3 under item 3B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Warmoth,
Yes.
Supervisor McCauley,
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez,
Yes.
Chairman Poitras.
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. And the meeting is adjourned.